Zaimski from Greece, a midwife working with other midwives here in Greece to supporting the natural birth and the intervention-free birth. And I'm happy to announce that I was able to make an interview with Kristine Marie Lauria, who's a very famous midwife from the US. And here she is. Kristine, do you want to tell us maybe who you are? What makes you such a good midwife? What was your journey to become a midwife? And tell us about you.
I have been a community midwife for, this is my 37th year. I've worked primarily out of hospital, almost exclusively. And I don't currently have a private home birth practice anymore because I travel all over the world and I teach and lecture and I attend births, but I attend them usually when I'm working with MSF, Doctors Without Borders, or sometimes I am asked to attend here in the US and other places as well, but usually only for breeches, twins, or triplets. That's all that I attend now. I don't have my own private practice. I am co-author of a book on physiological breech birth. And I lecture, as I said, all over the world. So some people are familiar with me because I get to meet all sorts of people everywhere. I have.
And how was your approach to become a member of Breech Without Borders? And what is your journey within this organization? And how did you become a supporter of the intervention-free physiological breech birth, or in general, the physiological birth?
Breech Without Borders is a nonprofit that was established in, I think, 2018. And I was teaching with them for a few years and traveling and teaching about breech and twins. And that's generally what their focus is, on breech. And they have instructors all over the place now, all over the world. So they are dedicated to training practitioners in breech birth. Breech Without Borders.
Kristine, in Greece we are facing a change of law where the government is trying to forbid to the midwives to practice midwifery, meaning to do the birth, to be responsible for a natural birth of low-risk pregnancies. What is your opinion on that? What will that mean for the women here in Greece? And keep in mind that we already have a C-section rate in Greece of 70%, which is on its own crime against humanity. And Greece also already paid 2 times a fine to the European Union for this development. But it seems that the C-section situation here in Greece is still so lucrative to the gynecologists, to the medical system, that it's easier to pay the fine to the European Union than changing this habit of treating women. Tell me, what is your opinion on that?
Yeah, well, I agree with you that it would catapult you into some sort of dystopia where birth is concerned and where autonomy in birth is greatly jeopardized, because women need to have choices for their births, and not everyone wants to birth with a medical professional in a hospital with an obstetrician. Not everybody wants to birth in a hospital. There are certainly women that are not willing to go to hospitals, and I think that what it will end up doing is driving home birth underground, and it will make it less safe because people will feel like they do not want to go to the hospital unless there's a real dire circumstance, and then they've waited too long, and then we have bad outcomes. And then that further cements the opinion of the medical establishment. See, home birth is dangerous. This is what happens when you stay home. No, this is what happens when you are limiting choices, safe choices for women in birth. They are forced to go underground and either have unassisted births or births with unskilled birth attendants because the skilled ones are too scared to help them because they might go to jail. If indeed this is going to be marked illegal, that means that someone can go to jail for this. And so it's going to make home birth less safe. And we know this. This has been proven over and over again. And we see this happening in other parts of the world and even certain states here in the U.S. where the laws are becoming more and the regulations are becoming more and more restrictive. And so I think this is a very, very dangerous precedent. It's a very slippery slope. And it's more than just that women won't have choices and the cesarean rate will go up, which are all horrible things, but it is going to make birth a lot less safe. And especially for those women having C-sections, if they want to go on and have more children, every pregnancy and every C-section after that first C-section, it becomes more dangerous for them. And this is something that is never highlighted by medical professionals. Yeah, it is known. It's well known and well documented. It's not my opinion. It's out there anywhere, and any physician that is going to be truthful will say, oh, absolutely. The next pregnancy and birth for this person, whether it's vaginal or cesarean, is higher risk. Now she has gone into a higher risk category. And the more the cesareans we have, the higher risk it is for both the mother and that subsequent baby. And so for people that want big families, and there are still people out there that do want big families, for whatever reason, just because they do, or for religious reasons, it becomes very dangerous, and we start to see the maternal mortality rate go up then. So it's helping. None of this is helping anyone.
Kristine, could you tell us some more of your experiences? What kind of where did you start to become a midwife, and what kind of births have you done? Have you ever worked in a hospital, and how was that transition into the hospital? Because as far as I know, you are only a home birth midwife, and you told us already. Yeah. Did you have any transfers from the home birth setting into a hospital, and why was that?
So 37 years ago, when I was in my apprenticeship, I worked in an Amish community. If you're not familiar with the Amish, it's a particular religious sect where they don't have electricity, they don't have running water, they live very simply, they drive horses and buggies. They do not have, in our country, a social security number, and so they don't pay in taxes to the government. They don't get governmental funding for anything. So they're born at home, they die at home, they grow their own food, they raise their own animals. This is how they are. And so this was my, I worked also with the non-Amish population, but this was a big introduction to me of very non-interventive birth. Like, they did not go in for ultrasounds and have blood tests drawn and things like that. I mean, very basic things sometimes we would do at home. And so that's just what I learned. I learned physiological birth. And this is what I thought birth was. And it is what it is. But I didn't even realize how incredibly different it was in the hospital because I had never attended a hospital birth. And so I didn't have that experience to compare it to. So I thought, oh, wow, this is wonderful. This is birth. And it was, and sometimes it got complicated, and sometimes there were breaches, and sometimes there were twins, and we just did everything at home, and it was very normal. And I was very young. I was in my mid-20s, and it wasn't until I either had a transfer to a hospital or was asked to support someone in their hospital birth that I saw what birth in the hospital was, and it was much better then, actually, than it is now. At least in the U.S., it was a little bit better, not great, but I was just shocked at how all the vaginal exams and all the tubes and wires and everything that went, and I'm like, what do you need all of this for? This is a healthy woman coming in to have a baby. I was shocked. I had read about it in books, but I thought, oh, well, that's not everybody. Oh, no, it was everybody. And so I learned the medicalization of birth, about the medicalization of birth after I learned normal physiological birth. So this has always been my foundation, and I stand by it. And now I work with a very extremely high risk population when I go to places like sub-Saharan Africa, with Doctors Without Borders, when I go there, or Bangladesh, to refugee camps. These women and babies are the highest risk in the world just by virtue of where they are and what their life circumstances are, and poor nutrition, and very poor access to any kind of care. And so when they come and they're in front of me having their babies, they walk in, their hemoglobin levels are very low. Some of them are very malnourished. They've had little to no prenatal care. And yet they have their babies. They give birth. Their babies come out. They're everything. The vast majority of the time is actually quite well. It doesn't mean we don't deal with hemorrhages. Doesn't mean, we don't have certain complications. But honestly, these very high risk women come in and they give birth. And most of the time, even when we have to intervene, everything is fine. Why? Because birth is a normal physiological process. And most of the time it works because we are programmed for survival. And those that don't survive. They might not have survived even in a hospital oftentimes. So I think, I really learned that even though birth can get exceedingly complicated, it still can be managed, and we can still come out the other side without a lot of the fancy things, and certainly without huge cesarean section rates, because my cesarean section rate with this population is about 4%. And probably a few more women than that would have needed it. I would have, if I were not in this situation, I probably would have sent that person on sooner. So maybe it would have been 6%. But we're required to do everything vaginally unless or until the mother's life is in danger. And so 4% is low, but maybe it would be 6 or 7% if I could be like, yeah, well, we'll just do this to err on the side of caution now. So really not high. It should not be high. It should not be over 10% or 15. So I have attended as a primary midwife because I've certainly witnessed a lot more. Sometimes I walk in and there's a midwife working, and I'm there, and maybe I hand some things, but I'm not the primary midwife, so I don't count those in my statistics. So I've witnessed a lot more, or participated in a lot more than I was primary for. But for primary births, a little over 5,000, because I've been to some places where it's very high volume, so several births a day sometimes, so hundreds of births in a month. So this is why, and of course I'm not attending all those hundreds as a primary, but I certainly am participating in some. So a little over 5,000. And then for breeches, exclusively just singleton breeches, almost 600 now. And then as primary. And then for twins, it is in the high 400s. I don't know the exact number, but just it's under 500 for twins. And for and for triplets, it's 12 12 sets of triplets that I have been involved in. 7 of those have been in the field working with MSF in Africa or Indonesia. And then I have had 4 sets born at home in the U.S. And then I've supported a few, and then I've supported a few other ones. Yeah. So, and then I support people. I have triplet moms reach out to me from other countries, and I support them through their pregnancies. They just want somebody to believe in them, that they can get to term, even if they end up wanting or having a C-section because they don't have access to vaginal birth. And that's not necessarily their goal, but they're told that they need to have these babies at 32 weeks or 34 weeks. Absolutely. And they want to go to at least 35 or 36 weeks or even more. And so I'll support them and, get them in touch with other triplet moms. And so that's a very important, I think, thing for women to have, because when you have everybody around you telling you this is not possible and you cannot do this and you can't carry these babies that long. And I'm like, yeah, absolutely you can. And it's all about your mindset and most primarily the nutrition. And if you have good nutrition and you're literally just pretty much eating as a full-time job, now there are other things that can happen in any birth, whether it's a singleton or whether it's triplets, that if you develop high blood pressure, if this happens or that, then okay, that's a different thing. And it puts you in a higher risk category, even if you're having just one head down baby. But most women, if they're healthy and their babies are healthy, they can make it to term easily, no matter how many babies that they're carrying, especially when they were naturally conceived. It's because now we're seeing generational, the generational effects of medicalized birth. And because they grew up with their mothers needing C-section or their mothers just going into the hospital and just lying in the bed and just trusting that the hospital has their best interest at heart. So and low levels of breastfeeding, all of that. And so we're seeing that, but I think now there's a bit of a backlash, and because I think primarily social media, because you can see births on social media anytime you want, as many as you want. You could watch birth all day, any kind of birth you want, because they're there. There are websites specifically just showing home births and some hospital births as well, but women really birthing under their own power in a lot of these cases. And so we're seeing this. And so I think a lot of women are like, oh, well, I can do this. Even though my mother didn't do it, I can do this. And so women are starting to take back their power. And so there's a bit of a backlash. And I think we're at a very important time in history for birth. I think we are really on the precipice of tipping over to one side or the other. So with the increased medicalization of birth, we've got this increased radicalization of a large population of like, no way. And they're going so far away from even midwifery-led care to really autonomous, I'm doing this. Like, no, they call it a wild pregnancy here, where you don't get any prenatal care and you don't have anybody at your birth, or maybe you have a friend there or whatever. So they're going, there's a backlash going really to the other side, which I have no problem with, because it's somebody who, if you want to, talk about autonomous birth and really having autonomy in decision making, this is fine. But a lot of times they are not, they're not as well informed as they think they are. And so I think a lot of people are doing this not understanding the full repercussions of what it means to go completely counter. So you've got the highly medicalized here and the highly demedicalized here, and they're both radical, and the radicalization on either side isn't always good. There can be a happy medium.
Kristine, how did you become an instructor in Breech Without Borders? Kristine,
Well, I was posting online on different, I'm not on social media now, but when I was posting on some of the breech groups. People would ask a question and I would say, actually, and Breech Without Borders saw that I was answering these questions. They're like, oh, this is somebody who obviously knows about breech birth because she knows the answers. And so they just reached out to me, and I started teaching for them. So that's really how it came about, the very simplified version of it. It developed over time, but that's basically what happened.
And what role do human rights play for midwifery and for women? And what role?
Yeah, that's a good question. Birth. Where, how, and with whom to give birth is a basic human right, and I believe very strongly in that. And I could say this off record, and you can even edit this out. I highly recommend you contact Hermine Hayes-Klein, who is a human rights and childbirth attorney. This is what she does all day, every day, and she can speak to the rights of women in birth, and she represents midwives and women who have been forced into cesareans for birth. She represents them in court, and she's just amazing. She's in the middle of a court case here right now on just that subject, forced cesarean because the physician didn't have training in breech and would not get training in breech and would not honor her desire for a vaginal breech birth. It's coercion when you are giving someone no choice. It's absolutely coercion, and we should have choices. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas how we can improve our situation here in Greece?
Wow. This is a start. I think that the midwives need to come together in a cohesive way, and you also need a consumer group. You need to have everyone contact all of their clients, all of the people who had home births, want home births, any group of people, doulas, whatever you have there, where childbirth educators, have them come together and form a consumer group that goes that speaks to what women want in birth, because ultimately it's going to be the consumer that will end up winning, because their rights are being violated, and when they understand that and that their choices are being taken away, they can be some of the loudest voices. I'm not sure how your laws work there and how your legislation, your government works to institute laws like these, and if there's they're open for public opinion. We have that here where the public can come and make statements, whether it's publicly or write letters or whatever. So whether it's a letter writing campaign, phone call, whatever it is that you can do, that's what they should do. But you need to have someone who has a very loud voice, someone who will spearhead an organization and get people organized and just really rally against this, so that they know that it's a very, very bad idea to take away these rights, and find an attorney. Maybe it's something that Hermine would be able to help with on your end, an attorney in your own country that can Okay. Represent you.
What is the role of a midwife in a society, or what would be a society without a midwife?
Well, I think it's changed over time, but we midwives are the keepers of normal physiological birth, and we are we're a really big foundational part historically of in societies, and it's still that way in certain parts of the world. But I think midwives should be the primary gateway to birth. When a woman becomes pregnant and she looks at that test, the first thing she shouldn't think is, oh, well, I better call my doctor. No, I need to go to the midwife. And then if at some point in the pregnancy things develop where they need to consult a physician, that's when the physician should come in. They should have absolutely no part in normal physiological birth. Midwives should always be the primary care providers for women. And so then that maybe 15% or so that falls into a higher risk category, they can be then co-managed by the midwife and the obstetrician in a hospital situation if that develops. So this is the role of the midwife. They should be all over the world the primary care providers for pregnant women.
Okay, so we came to the end of our interview. Are you interested in having the last word? Do you want to tell us something about yourself or about the situation here and give us some hope?
Wow. Well, I mean, I guess the last thing that I would just want to say is that we have moved very far from our roots, and we've forgotten generally as a society that birth was and still should be a normal physiological event that happens within the family. It is a sacred rite of passage, actually, and we are forgetting that it's this rite of passage with all the medicalization. And so I think when we can view it in that way, and we witness birth and how sacred and calm and beautiful it can be, I think that we will, find our roots again. But with the over medicalization, there's not really any hope in that, because there's birth is considered dangerous in the medical community, and it is not. Birth is not in and of itself a medical event. It is a normal physiological process, as I said many times, and it sometimes requires medical intervention. So when we remember that, it helps change the view and the tide.
Thank you very much, Kristine, for your interview and for your insights and for your knowledge and for everything you do for women worldwide. And it was a pleasure to meet you. And we will keep up the fight here in Greece too, as well. Because we owe it to the next generations, we owe it to our daughters, we owe it to our mothers who were not treated well as all the women that are not treated well at the moment. We will not give up. And thank you very much for your help and support.
You're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome.